The rain fell mercilessly on the cemetery, matching Victor Mercer's mood as he stood stoically beside his father's casket. At 62, Theodore Mercer had left this world too soon. A heart attack, they said. Victor's jaw clenched as he caught his younger brother, Liam, whispering to their sister, Patricia, both of them shooting glances his way. "He shouldn't even be here," Liam muttered, loud enough for Victor to hear. Victor's wife, Olivia, stood beside him, her hand not quite touching his arm, her attention more focused on her phone than the ceremony. Their 2 daughters flanked him. Abigail, 26, and Jessica, 19. Only Jessica seemed genuinely affected, tears streaming down her face for the grandfather who had always showered her with affection. As the ceremony concluded, the family gathered at Theodore's sprawling estate, a Victorian mansion that had been in the family for generations. Rain continued to lash against the windows as Victor sat alone in a corner of the drawing room, watching his siblings fawn over Reginald Foster, their father's attorney. "I believe we should begin," Foster announced, adjusting his glasses as he placed a leather portfolio on the antique desk. The family assembled, with Liam and Patricia taking seats closest to Foster. Victor remained standing, arms crossed. "As executor of Theodore's will, I'll keep this brief," Foster began, his voice carrying the practiced detachment of a man who had delivered both fortunes and ruin many times before. "To my son Liam, I leave 30% of Mercer Industries and the summer house in Cape Cod. To my daughter, Patricia, 30% of Mercer Industries and my collection of antiquities." Victor felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He had built Mercer Industries alongside his father, transforming it from a struggling manufacturing company into a technological powerhouse. His innovations had saved the company. Yet here he was, listening to his father give away his life's work to siblings who had contributed nothing. "And to my son, Victor," Foster paused, glancing up at him with an unreadable expression. Liam smirked. "Don't worry about Victor. He's used to disappointment. He's been one his entire life." Foster cleared his throat. "To my son, Victor, I leave my personal effects and journals, and the remaining 40% of Mercer Industries conditional upon." Liam exploded, rising to his feet. "That's not what you told us." Foster's expression hardened. "If you'd allow me to finish, Mr. Mercer." "It doesn't matter," Liam snarled, turning to Victor. "You get nothing. We've already voted with the board. By tomorrow morning, your access will be revoked. Father may have had a moment of weakness, but we've taken care of it." Victor's expression remained impassive, though a dangerous light flickered in his eyes. "Is that so? You were always a disappointment," Liam continued, emboldened by Victor's calm. "Father told me so himself. The only reason he kept you around was out of obligation." Olivia had moved to stand beside Liam and Patricia. Her betrayal was so expected that Victor felt nothing but cold confirmation of what he'd long suspected. His marriage of 15 years had been dying for at least 10 of them. As the room erupted into arguments, Jessica approached Victor, her young face streaked with tears. She pressed something cold and metal into his palm. "Grandpa gave this to me last week," she whispered. "He said it was for you, Dad. He said it unlocks the truth." Victor looked down at the small brass key in his hand, aged and worn. His father had always been a man of secrets and riddles. "Don't tell anyone," Jessica added. "Grandpa said they tried to take it from you." Victor closed his fingers around the key and nodded at his daughter. For the first time that day, a glimmer of something, perhaps hope, perhaps vengeance, sparked within him. Later that night, as a thunderstorm raged outside, Victor sat alone in his study in his modern downtown penthouse. The brass key lay on his desk beside a tumbler of whiskey. His phone buzzed with messages from the board members, confirming Liam's words. An emergency meeting had been called, and Victor's removal was all but guaranteed. He picked up the key, turning it over in his fingers. It was old, far older than anything he'd seen in his father's possession. The design was intricate, with a family crest he didn't recognize engraved on the bow. His doorbell rang, pulling him from his thoughts. Victor checked the security camera to find Jessica standing in the hallway, a cardboard box in her arms. "I took this from Grandpa's study before they could go through everything," she explained when he let her in. "I think it's what the key opens." Inside the box was a small wooden chest, its dark wood polished with age. The lock matched the key, and when Victor inserted it, the mechanism clicked open with surprising ease. The chest contained a leather-bound journal, yellowed with age, and a USB drive, so incongruously modern against the aged leather. Victor opened the journal to find his father's distinctive handwriting filling the pages. "Victor, if you're reading this, then they've done exactly as I predicted. They try to take everything from you, but you're my true heir, not just in blood, but in spirit. What follows is the truth about our family, about Mercer Industries, and about the legacy that is rightfully yours. They think they've won, but this is just the beginning. The key you hold unlocks more than this chest. It unlocks a power they cannot imagine." Victor read late into the night. The journal revealed a history he'd never known. His father had been playing a long game, one full of secrets, strategies, and an unexpected trust in the son everyone else tried to sideline. Testing Victor's resilience while secretly documenting the corruption and betrayals of Liam and Patricia. The USB drive contained videos, documents, and recordings, evidence of embezzlement, backroom deals, and even blackmail. But most shocking of all was the revelation about Olivia. The journal contained detailed accounts of her decade-long affair with District Attorney Maxwell Bryant, a man Victor had considered a friend. Theodore had hired private investigators who documented everything: the secret meetings, the offshore accounts they'd established, and their plans to eventually take control of Victor's shares in the company. As dawn broke, Victor closed the journal, his mind racing with the revelations and the beginnings of a plan. They had thought him broken, defeated. They had no idea what they had unleashed. Jessica slept on his couch, loyal and innocent. Looking at her, Victor made a promise to himself. Those who had betrayed him would pay, and his daughter would inherit the legacy that was rightfully theirs. But first, he would teach them all a lesson they would never forget. He tucked the journal and drove into his safe and picked up his phone. It was time to call in favors from people who owed him. People his family didn't even know existed. The key that unlocked the truth would now unlock his vengeance. The downtown offices of Mercer Industries occupied the top 10 floors of a gleaming skyscraper that Victor had commissioned himself 5 years earlier. As he stepped into the elevator, security badge still functioning despite Liam's promises, Victor felt the eyes of employees on him. Some sympathetic, others curious, a few showing the smug satisfaction of those betting on the winning side. He bypassed his own office suite and headed directly to the executive boardroom, where, according to his sources, Liam was holding court with the board members and Patricia. As Victor pushed open the heavy oak doors, the conversation inside died immediately. "Victor," Liam recovered quickly, adjusting his Italian silk tie. "This is a private meeting of a company that's 40% mine," Victor replied calmly, taking an empty seat at the far end of the table. "Please don't let me interrupt." Patricia exchanged glances with Reynolds, the CFO who had always aligned himself with whoever held power. "We were just discussing the transition plan," Patricia said, her voice barely concealing her nervousness. "I'm sure you were," Victor said, placing a folder on the table. "I brought some reading material that might interest the board." Before Liam could object, Victor had distributed copies of selected pages from Theodore's journal, carefully chosen excerpts that hinted at, but didn't fully reveal, the depth of his knowledge. "What is this supposed to be?" demanded Liam, but his face had already drained of color as he recognized their father's handwriting. "Insurance," Victor replied. "Father was more observant than you gave him credit for." Reynolds cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should adjourn until our legal team can review these documents," Victor interrupted, his voice sharp. "I think the board should read them first. After all, they're the ones who will have to answer to the shareholders, and the public when this all comes to light. The room fell silent, the weight of Victor's words hanging heavy in the air. He had them exactly where he wanted them, off balance and uncertain. The battle for Mercer Industries was far from over, but Victor was just getting started. "No need," Victor interrupted. "I'm not here to fight. In fact, I'm willing to sell my shares." It caught everyone off guard. Patricia narrowed her eyes suspiciously. "You're willing to walk away? Just like that?" "For the right price," Victor confirmed. "I'll have my terms delivered by the end of the day. Until then, I suggest you all familiarize yourselves with those documents." As Victor left the boardroom, he heard the heated whispers break out behind him. Phase 1 was complete. He had sown doubt and confusion. They would be scrambling now, trying to figure out exactly what he knew and how to counter it. His next stop was the office of Dorothy Winters, his father's executive assistant for over 30 years. Dorothy had always maintained a facade of neutrality in family politics, but Victor knew her loyalty to his father had been absolute. They cleared out his office already, Dorothy informed him when he entered her domain. Her disapproval was evident in the tight line of her mouth. "I expected nothing less," Victor replied. "But I'm not here about that. I need access to the Alpine Project files." Dorothy's eyes widened slightly. "Those are sealed by your father's directive. Even I don't have access." "I have this," Victor said, showing her the brass key. Dorothy stared at it for a long moment, then nodded once. "Follow me." She led him to a small conference room and locked the door behind him. From her blazer pocket, she produced a key of her own and approached a painting on the wall, a mountain landscape that had hung in every Mercer office for as long as Victor could remember. Behind it was a wall safe with 2 keyholes. "Your father said this day might come," Dorothy explained, inserting her key into one lock. "He made me promise to help you, but only if you came with a matching key." Victor inserted his brass key into the second lock, and together they turned them. The safe opened to reveal a single document, a deed to property in the Swiss Alps that Victor had never heard of. "What is this?" he asked, examining the deed. "Your grandfather's legacy," Dorothy replied. "Your father protected it all these years, keeping it separate from the company and the family. No one else knows about it." Victor studied the deed. The property included a substantial tract of land and what appeared to be mining rights. "What's so special about this land?" "I don't know the details," Dorothy admitted, "but your father once told me it was worth more than everything else he owned combined. He said when the time came, you would understand its value." Victor carefully folded the deed and placed it in his inside pocket. "Thank you, Dorothy. I may be leaving Mercer Industries, but I hope I can count on your discretion a while longer." "Of course," she nodded. "And Victor, your father was proud of you. He told me that many times. Whatever Liam and Patricia might say, remember that." As Victor left the building, his phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. "Surveillance confirmed. Wife meeting Bryant at Westlake Hotel, room 712. Now, the cold anger that had been simmering in Victor's chest since the funeral suddenly crystallized into something harder, more focused. He directed his driver to the Westlake, a discreet luxury establishment on the outskirts of the city. Using the hotel service entrance and a staff key card procured by his contacts, Victor made his way to the 7th floor outside room 712. He paused, considering his options. Then, rather than bursting in, he simply called Olivia's phone inside the room. He could hear her ringtone, followed by muffled cursing and wrestling. Victor waited until she answered. "Victor, what is it?" Her voice was tight with irritation and poorly concealed nervousness. "I just want to let you know I won't be home for dinner," he said calmly. "I'm meeting with my lawyers to discuss a change in our situation." A pause. "What are you talking about?" "I think you know. Olivia, give my regards to Max, and tell him the DA's office should expect some interesting files in their inbox tomorrow. Nothing that concerns him directly, of course, just some evidence about corrupt officials. I'm sure he'll want to prosecute vigorously." He ended the call before she could respond and walked away, satisfied with planting the seed of doubt between the lovers. Let them wonder exactly what he knew and what evidence he possessed. Back in his car, Victor received another text. Package recovered from Bryant's office safe, delivering to secure location as instructed. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The pieces were moving into place, guided by the revelations in his father's journal and his own methodical preparation. Those who thought they had cornered him were about to discover they had merely awakened a predator they didn't know existed. That evening, as Victor sat reviewing the Alpine property documents, Jessica arrived at his penthouse. Her expression was troubled. "Mom's been trying to reach you," she said. "She says you're making terrible accusations." "Has she denied them?" Victor asked gently. Jessica looked away. "No, she just says it's complicated, and you're trying to manipulate me." Victor handed her a single photograph from the evidence his father had collected. Olivia and Bryant together, dated 3 years earlier during a family vacation, when Olivia had claimed to be visiting her sister. "I won't use you as a pawn in this, Jessica," Victor promised. "But I won't let them lie to you either. Your mother has made her choices. Now I'm making mine." Jessica stared at the photograph, her young face hardening in a way that reminded Victor painfully of himself. "What are you going to do?" "What's necessary," Victor replied. "The question is, where will you stand?" "With you," Jessica said without hesitation, "always with you." Victor nodded, feeling a complex mixture of pride, sadness, and resolve. His daughter deserved better than a legacy of betrayal that had been building around them. This moment marked a turning point for both of them. He would dismantle that legacy brick by brick and rebuild something stronger from its ruins. The key his father had left him had indeed unlocked the truth. Now he would unlock a reckoning none of them would ever forget. The Alpine property documents had led Victor to an unexpected discovery. The land, which had been in the Mercer family for 3 generations, contained one of the largest untapped reserves of rare earth minerals in Europe. These minerals, essential for modern technology and renewable energy, represented a fortune that dwarfed the value of Mercer Industries. Theodore had kept this secret even while building the company, creating a separate trust that would only activate upon specific conditions. Conditions that Victor now realized had been triggered by the actions of Liam and Patricia after the funeral. Vincent Foster, a geologist who had worked with Theodore for decades, confirmed Victor's suspicions when they met at a private airfield outside the city. "Your father knew the true value of the land 15 years ago," Foster explained, spreading geological surveys across the table in the airport lounge. "But he was concerned about what would happen if Liam or Patricia discovered it. He watched how they behaved with the fortune they already knew about and decided they couldn't be trusted with this. So he created an elaborate test," Victor mused, "to see who deserved this legacy." Foster nodded. "The company was always the decoy, important, valuable, but ultimately just a fraction of the true Mercer fortune. And now the trust provisions activate. You have sole control of the Alpine property and all mining rights. Your father left specific instructions for how to proceed. Contacts, governmental approvals, everything you need." Victor absorbed this information, pieces falling into place. His father's apparent favoritism toward Liam and Patricia had been a calculated misdirection, allowing Victor to develop independently while protecting the true inheritance. "There's one more thing," Foster added, sliding a sealed envelope across the table. "Your father wanted you to have this when everything else was revealed." Inside the envelope was a handwritten letter and a small photograph of Theodore holding an infant Victor, his expression one of unmistakable pride. "Victor, by now you understand why I had to maintain the deception. Liam and Patricia were born into privilege and never developed the strength of character needed for what comes next. You did. Every test, every setback I allowed you to face, they were preparation. I'm sorry for the pain this caused, but not for the man it helped you become. The future of our family now rests with you and Jessica. the only ones who have demonstrated the wisdom and integrity this responsibility requires. The others made their choices long ago. Now it's time for you to make yours. Victor carefully refolded the letter, his resolve hardening. The weight of his father's trust and love filled him with a sense of purpose he had never known before. What had begun as a quest for vengeance was evolving into something more profound. A responsibility to uphold his father's true legacy and ensure it passed to those worthy of it. That evening, as arrangements for his departure to Switzerland were being finalized, Victor received an unexpected visitor. Abigail, his eldest daughter, arrived unannounced at his penthouse. Unlike Jessica, Abigail had always been closer to Olivia, absorbing her mother's materialistic values and dismissive attitude toward Victor. He hadn't heard from her since the funeral. "Mom says you've lost your mind," Abigail began without preamble, pacing the living room. "She says you're destroying the family out of spite. Is that what you believe?" Victor asked calmly. Abigail hesitated. "I don't know what to believe anymore. Everyone's telling different stories." "Then perhaps it's time you learn the truth." Victor revealed selected pieces of evidence from his father's collection, enough to demonstrate Olivia's infidelity and Liam and Patricia's plotting, but nothing about the Alpine property. Abigail's composure cracked as she processed the evidence. "Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me over your mother?" Victor countered gently. Tears filled Abigail's eyes. "I don't know. Maybe not. That's why I waited. The truth needs no defense, Abigail. It simply is." She wiped away her tears, visibly struggling with what she'd learned. "What happens now?" "Now I do what's necessary to protect what matters," Victor replied. "The question is whether you'll stand with Jessica and me, or with those who've been deceiving you." Abigail didn't answer immediately. "I need time to think." "Take all the time you need," Victor said, "but be careful what you share with Olivia and the others. They'll use whatever they can against us." After Abigail left, Victor received confirmation that his private jet was fueled and ready. The first phase of his plan was complete, securing his father's true legacy and establishing the foundation for what would come next. As he packed a small suitcase, Victor received a call from Maxwell Bryant himself. "I think we should talk," Bryant said, his prosecutor's voice carefully modulated to convey reasonableness. "I believe we've said all that needs saying," Victor replied coldly. "You don't understand the forces you're dealing with," Bryant warned. "This goes beyond your family drama. There are powerful people involved who won't appreciate your interference." Victor smiled thinly, though Bryant couldn't see it. "Is that a threat, Max?" "It's a reality check from an old friend. Walk away now. Sell your shares. Take a generous settlement. Olivia is prepared to be very reasonable in the divorce. I'm sure she is. Give her a message for me, Max. Tell her I said checkmate in 3 moves." Victor ended the call and finished packing. Bryant's call had confirmed his suspicions. This conspiracy extended beyond his family, involving powerful people who had their own interests in Mercer Industries. Victor was prepared, not just to protect his daughter and their inheritance, but to finally expose the web that had ensnared the family for too long. Pieces of a larger puzzle were starting to connect. Just before midnight, Victor met Jessica at a private airstrip. "Are you sure about this?" he asked her. "You can still walk away. Finish your semester at university." Jessica shook her head. "I'm sure, Dad. Grandpa trusted you, and I trust you. Whatever happens next, we face it together." As their plane took off towards Switzerland, Victor knew they had crossed a point of no return. The betrayal at his father's funeral had set events in motion that would either destroy him or forge a new dynasty from the ashes of the old. The brass key that had started it all rested in his pocket, a constant reminder of his father's faith and the responsibility he now carried. The truth had been unlocked, but the consequences of that truth were still unfolding. In the darkness of the cabin, Victor's mind raced with calculations and contingencies. Liam, Patricia, Olivia, Bryant, they had awakened something in him they couldn't possibly understand. They would soon learn that Victor Mercer was not just his father's son, but his true heir in every sense that mattered. The game had only just begun. The Swiss Alps stretched before Victor and Jessica like a fortress of nature, pristine peaks guarding secrets buried deep within their ancient stone. Their helicopter landed on a small plateau where a rustic but well-maintained chalet stood against the magnificent backdrop. This was the headquarters of Alpine Minerals Trust, the entity Theodore Mercer had created decades ago. They were greeted by Helena Vogel, a stern Swiss woman in her 60s with silver hair and piercing blue eyes. "Mr. Mercer." "Fräulein Mercer," she nodded crisply. "Your father said you would come eventually. Please follow me." The interior of the chalet belied its traditional exterior. Beyond the wooden entrance hall lay a state-of-the-art facility with laboratories, offices, and what appeared to be a command center filled with monitors displaying geological data and security feeds. "Your father established this operation 30 years ago," Helena explained as she led them through the facility. "What began as a small geological survey evolved into something much more significant when he discovered the deposits." "What exactly did he find?" Jessica asked, staring at a glowing mineral sample displayed in a sealed case. "Dysprosium, neodymium, ytterbium," Helena listed, rare earth elements essential for advanced technology. But the truly valuable discovery was something else. She led them to a secure laboratory where a scientist was examining a metallic substance that seemed to shift colors under the light. "We call it mercurium," the scientist said, looking up from his work, "named after your family. It's an entirely new element with extraordinary properties, superconductivity at room temperature, unprecedented energy storage capacity, and molecular stability that defies current understanding of physics." Victor and Jessica exchanged a look of awe as the magnitude of their inheritance became clear. The future was now truly in their hands. Victor studied the sample. "And this is what my father protected all these years." Helena nodded. "He knew its potential and its dangers. In the wrong hands, this discovery could be weaponized or monopolized. He wanted it developed responsibly, for the benefit of humanity, not just profit." "How close are you to commercial applications?" Victor asked. "We've developed working prototypes for energy storage and medical applications," the scientist explained, "but your father insisted we proceed cautiously, maintaining absolute secrecy until proper protections were in place." Victor absorbed this information, understanding at last why his father had been so careful about his true legacy. This wasn't just about wealth. It was about world-changing technology. "What about security?" Victor asked. Helena's expression tightened. "We've detected increased surveillance in the past month. Someone knows something is here, even if they don't know exactly what." "Bryant," Victor murmured, "and whoever he's working with. We should assume our security is compromised." Helena agreed. "Your father anticipated this possibility and prepared accordingly." She led them to Theodore's private office within the facility. Like the safe in Mercer Industries, this room had a dual-key system. Helena produced her key while Victor used the brass key from Jessica. Inside was a comprehensive contingency plan, alternate facilities, secure communication protocols, and a network of trusted individuals positioned strategically around the world. Theodore had created a shadow infrastructure that could operate independently of Mercer Industries, if necessary. "Your father called this the Phoenix Protocol," Helena explained, "a way to rise from the ashes if his legacy was threatened." Victor spent the next 2 days fully immersing himself in his father's operation, absorbing years of research and planning. Jessica, with her background in biochemistry, quickly grasped the scientific implications of mercurium and began working alongside the research team. On the 3rd day, Helena brought news from their intelligence network. Liam and Patricia have sold controlling interest in Mercer Industries to Olympus Group, a consortium led by Senator Howard Blackwell and several other political and business figures. Maxwell Bryant facilitated the transaction. Victor nodded, unsurprised. "And the payment?" $300 million each, with positions on the Olympus board. "They sold cheap," Victor observed coldly. They have no idea what they've given away. Helena hesitated before continuing. There's more. Olivia has filed for divorce, claiming emotional abandonment and financial misconduct. She's seeking half of all your assets, including any hidden foreign holdings you may control. She's fishing, Jessica said, anger coloring her voice. She knows there's something more, but doesn't know what it is. Let her fish, Victor replied calmly. We're no longer playing their game. It's time they learned they're playing ours. The tables had turned, and the true test of legacy, loyalty, and family was now underway. That evening, Victor initiated the first countermove. Using the secure communication system Theodore had established, he contacted Lawrence Sullivan, an old friend who had risen to become director of the European Commission on Technological Innovation. The samples you sent are extraordinary, Sullivan told him over the encrypted line. If these properties can be maintained at scale, we're talking about a revolution in clean energy. That's what we believe, Victor confirmed. But there are complications. Your family situation. We've heard rumors. More than that, Victor said, there's a consortium forming. American political and business interests who want to control this technology exclusively. My father believed it should benefit humanity broadly. Sullivan's expression grew serious. We share that view. The Commission would support an international development approach, with appropriate protections and profit sharing, of course. That's what I hope to hear, Victor said. I'm preparing to make a formal presentation to the Commission, but I'll need certain guarantees. They spent the next hour outlining a framework that would protect Victor's interests while advancing his father's vision. By the time they ended the call, the foundation for a powerful alliance had been established. The next morning, Victor received an encrypted message from his team in America. Olivia had been seen entering Senator Blackwell's private estate, accompanied by Maxwell Bryant. The connections were becoming clearer. This wasn't just about Mercer Industries anymore, but about controlling the future of energy technology. They're consolidating their alliance, Victor told Jessica, as they reviewed the intelligence, but they're still looking in the wrong place. Jessica studied the security feeds. They'll find us eventually. I'm counting on it, Victor replied with a cold smile. But by then, it will be too late. Over the next week, Victor executed a series of carefully orchestrated moves. He established a new corporate entity, Phoenix Innovations, registered in Switzerland with a complex ownership structure that obscured his control. Through this entity, he filed strategic patents that, while not revealing mercurium itself, secured key applications and processes that would be essential to whoever developed the technology. Simultaneously, he leaked select information to trusted financial journalists about a revolutionary energy technology being developed in Europe, driving speculation about who might control it. Mercer Industries stock fluctuated wildly as investors tried to determine if the former family company was involved. When Liam called, Victor answered, savoring his brother's barely controlled panic. What the hell are you doing? Liam demanded. Blackwell is breathing down my neck about patent filings in Europe. I'm sure I don't know what you're talking about, Victor replied mildly. I'm just a disappointed son who lost his inheritance, remember? Cut the nonsense, Victor. Whatever game you're playing, you need to stop. These people aren't like father. They don't make empty threats. Neither do I, Victor said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. You chose your side, Liam. Live with the consequences. After ending the call, Victor turned to Helena. They'll be coming directly now. Implement Phase 2 of the Phoenix Protocol. Helena nodded grimly and began issuing orders to their security team. The Chalet facility would be evacuated, all critical research and samples transferred to their secondary sites scattered across Europe. As preparations proceeded, Jessica approached Victor with a troubled expression. I just got a call from Abigail. She says Mom is frantic, claiming you're going to destroy the family completely. Abigail doesn't know what to believe. Victor considered this information carefully. What did you tell her? I told her to look at the evidence and decide for herself whose version of family is worth saving. Victor nodded approvingly. And what did she say? She asked to meet. Just her and me, no one else. It could be a trap, Victor warned. Jessica nodded. I know, but it could also be a chance to bring her to our side. She deserves that chance, Dad. After careful consideration, Victor agreed to a controlled meeting between the sisters, with extensive security precautions. As Jessica prepared to return briefly to America, Victor gave her a small case, containing selected evidence and a secure communication device. Trust your instincts, he told her, but verify everything. With Jessica gone, Victor focused on the next phase of his strategy. The pieces were moving faster now, reactions and counter-reactions accelerating toward an inevitable confrontation. He had anticipated most of their moves so far, but he knew the real challenge was still coming. That night, as Victor worked in Theodore's office, Helena brought him a cup of coffee and an update. Our sources report unusual movement around Blackwell's operation. They're mobilizing resources, including some with military backgrounds. They're preparing to move against us directly, Victor concluded. Sooner than I expected. Should we accelerate our timeline? Victor considered the question, weighing variables and contingencies. No. Let them come. Everything is proceeding exactly as it should. Helena raised an eyebrow. You anticipated this. Victor's smile was cold and certain. My father taught me chess when I was 5 years old. The most important lesson wasn't how the pieces move, but how to see the entire board, including the moves that haven't happened yet. He took a sip of coffee and turned back to his work. The trap was baited, the players moving into position. All that remained was to spring it at precisely the right moment. The key that had unlocked his father's legacy now unlocked the path to Victor's vengeance. 3 more moves until checkmate, just as he had promised. The private airfield outside Geneva was shrouded in early morning mist as Victor's team prepared for the arrival of Senator Blackwell's delegation. Intelligence had confirmed that Blackwell, accompanied by Maxwell Bryant, and a team of security personnel with military backgrounds, had departed Washington on a private jet 12 hours earlier. They're making a direct approach, Helena observed as they reviewed the security feeds. Bolder than I expected. They believe they hold the advantage, Victor replied. Let's not disappoint them. The Phoenix Protocol's second phase was now fully operational. The primary Alpine facility had been systematically emptied of all crucial research, samples, and personnel, leaving behind only a carefully constructed facade. Meanwhile, the real operation had dispersed to 5 secondary sites across Europe, connected by secure communications and operating under deep cover. Victor had chosen to remain at the chalet with a small security team, presenting himself as the obvious target, while the true assets were secured elsewhere. It was a calculated risk, but one that served multiple purposes in his broader strategy. Mr. Bryant's advance team has landed, reported Claus, the head of security. They're conducting preliminary surveillance of the area. Victor nodded. Let them look. Everything they see should reinforce their existing assumptions. Shortly after noon, a sleek black helicopter landed at the airfield, and Senator Howard Blackwell emerged, a commanding figure in his 60s with silver hair and the practiced smile of a lifelong politician. Beside him walked Maxwell Bryant, whose expression betrayed none of the personal complications that existed between him and Victor. Victor welcomed them into the chalet's traditional entry hall, maintaining the pretense of a cordial business meeting despite the undercurrents of hostility. Senator Blackwell, what an unexpected pleasure, Victor said, extending his hand. Though I wonder what brings the chairman of the Senate Energy Committee to my humble retreat. Blackwell's handshake was firm, his smile not reaching his eyes. Let's dispense with the charade, shall we, Mr. Mercer? We both know why I'm here. Please enlighten me, Victor replied, gesturing toward the sitting room where refreshments had been arranged. Once seated, Blackwell wasted no time. You've discovered something extraordinary, something that could reshape global energy markets. Instead of bringing this breakthrough to your own country, you're shopping it to the Europeans. I wasn't aware that scientific discoveries came with nationality requirements, Victor observed mildly, especially discoveries made on Swiss soil by a Swiss-registered entity. Bryant leaned forward. Victor, be reasonable. We're offering you a partnership that would make you one of the most powerful men in America. Olympus Group has the political connections and industrial infrastructure to bring this technology to market under optimal conditions. Optimal for whom? Victor questioned. For Senator Blackwell's donors. For your personal ambitions, Max, or perhaps for my wife, whose interests you've been so diligently representing. Blackwell's expression hardened. Your family disputes are irrelevant to national security concerns. Are they? I find it curious that my brother and sister sold their shares to your consortium, just days after my father's funeral, almost as if the arrangement had been planned well in advance. Business opportunities emerge, Blackwell said dismissively. Forward-thinking individuals recognize and act on them. Victor sipped his coffee, projecting calm confidence. And Olivia's involvement. Was that also just good business? Bryant shifted uncomfortably, but maintained his composure. Your wife came to us with concerns about your psychological state following your father's death. She feared you might make irrational decisions affecting valuable assets. How considerate of her, Victor remarked dryly. And her relationship with you, Max. Was that also motivated by concern for my welfare? An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Blackwell glanced at Bryant, with barely concealed irritation before turning back to Victor. Mr. Mercer, let me be perfectly clear. What you've discovered is too important to be left in the hands of individuals, however well-intentioned. The United States government has national security interests that supersede private ownership considerations. Victor's expression remained impassive. Are you suggesting some form of compulsory acquisition, Senator? I'm suggesting a mutually beneficial arrangement. Blackwell countered smoothly. Generous compensation, continued involvement in development, and the satisfaction of knowing your discovery will strengthen America's position in the world. And if I decline? Blackwell's smile thinned. Various regulatory mechanisms exist to prevent sensitive technologies from falling into foreign hands. Your operations could face significant legal challenges. Threats wrapped in patriotic rhetoric, Victor observed. How very Washington. Reality, Mr. Mercer. Unpleasant, perhaps, but reality nonetheless. Victor stood, signaling the end of the meeting. I appreciate your directness, Senator. Allow me to respond in kind. Whatever you think you know about my discovery, I assure you, you've only glimpsed the surface. Whatever legal mechanisms you believe you control, I've already accounted for them. And whatever pressure you think you can apply through my family, I've rendered irrelevant. Blackwell's confidence wavered slightly. Don't overplay your hand, Mercer. You're one man against powerful institutions. Am I? Victor smiled enigmatically. Perhaps you should ask yourself why I allowed this meeting to take place at all. Why I'm still here, making no effort to hide. He let his words linger, the subtle threat wrapped in calm certainty. The senator and his allies had no idea how little control they actually had, or how exposed they truly were. When I could have disappeared with my research weeks ago. He led them back to the entrance hall. I'll consider your proposal, Senator. In the meantime, enjoy your stay in Switzerland. The mountains can be treacherous for those unfamiliar with the terrain. After they departed, Helena emerged from the monitoring room, where she had observed the exchange. They'll move against us tonight, she predicted. Blackwell's security team includes former Special Forces operators. I know, Victor replied calmly. Everything is proceeding as anticipated. That evening, Victor received a secure call from Jessica. I met with Abigail, she reported. It wasn't a trap. At least, not one she was aware of. She's confused, Dad. Torn between loyalty to Mom and what she knows is right. What did you tell her? The truth, as much as was safe. I showed her some of the evidence, enough to shake her certainty about Mom and Bryant. Victor nodded thoughtfully. And her response? She needs time, but I think she's starting to see through the lies. She asks questions about what we're really doing, about Grandpa's legacy. Did you tell her about Mercurium? No. Only that Grandpa left something important in your care. Something that could help people if protected properly. Good, Victor approved. Keep the channel open with her, but maintain operational security. We can't risk exposure, even for family. After ending the call, Victor made final preparations for the night ahead. The security systems were modified to create deliberate vulnerabilities, enough to give Blackwell's team confidence in their approach, while channeling them exactly where Victor wanted them. Shortly after midnight, the expected breach occurred. 8 operatives in tactical gear infiltrated the chalet through multiple entry points, clearly expecting to encounter resistance. Instead, they found the facility largely empty, with only token security that offered minimal opposition before retreating. From his hidden command center beneath the chalet, Victor watched the operation unfold on security monitors. The intruders methodically searched the facility, gathering what they believed to be research data and samples. In reality, they were collecting elaborately prepared decoys, convincing enough to pass initial inspection, but scientifically worthless. "They're taking the bait," Helena observed as they watched the team download data from deliberately exposed servers. "And broadcasting their every move," Victor added, monitoring the electronic signatures of their equipment. His technical team was tracing all communications back to their sources, mapping the network Blackwell had assembled. By dawn, the intruders had withdrawn with their stolen prizes, believing their mission successful. Victor allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction as reports confirmed the secondary sites remained secure and undetected. "They'll discover the deception eventually," Helena cautioned. Victor nodded, his expression resolute. "By the time they do, it will be too late. We've followed every move, every contact, every attempt to break through our defenses. Now we know who we're truly up against. And soon, so will the world." "Of course," Victor agreed, "but by then Phase 3 will be activated." The next day brought news from America. Jessica reported that Olivia had made a public statement claiming Victor had suffered a mental breakdown following his father's death, and was engaged in dangerous and irrational behavior that threatened the family legacy. She was seeking an emergency court order to have him declared mentally incompetent. "She's laying groundwork to challenge anything you might do legally," Jessica analyzed, "trying to undermine your credibility preemptively." Victor had anticipated this move as well, and our countermeasures are in place. Dr. Richter has prepared his independent psychological evaluation confirming your mental fitness, dated before Father's death as part of your annual executive assessment. The documentation showing Olivia's and Bryant's financial arrangements is ready for release if needed. Good. And the European Commission. Director Sullivan has scheduled the preliminary hearing for next week. The protective patents have been filed and fast-tracked. Victor nodded approvingly. "You've done well, Jessica. Your grandfather would be proud." Throughout the day, Victor monitored the fallout from the night's raid. As expected, Blackwell's team was now analyzing their stolen data, gradually realizing they had been deceived. The frustration was evident in increasing communication traffic between Switzerland and Washington. By evening, Victor received confirmation that Blackwell had requested an emergency meeting with the Secretary of Energy and representatives from national security agencies, a clear sign that the deception had been discovered and escalation was imminent. "They'll come directly for you next," Helena warned. "Not just for the research, but for you personally. This has become a matter of pride for them." "Let them come," Victor replied with cold certainty. "Every move they make brings them one step closer to the trap I've laid." Late that night, as Victor worked in the secure command center, he received an unexpected communication, a private message from Abigail, routed through Jessica's secure channel. "Dad, I don't know what's happening, but I know Mom is lying. Bryant was at our house tonight with some government people planning something. They mentioned extraction and containment. I'm scared. Tell me what to do." Victor felt a complex mixture of emotions, concern for his daughter's safety, satisfaction that she was beginning to see the truth, and cold anger at those who would use his family as pawns in their game. "Stay calm "And reveal nothing," he replied. "Jessica will contact you with instructions. Trust no one else." The pieces were moving faster now, the game accelerating towards its climax. Victor had foreseen most of these developments, but the direct threat to Abigail added a personal urgency that threatened his careful detachment. As he implemented the next phase of his plan, Victor remembered his father's words from the journal, a reminder that wisdom, preparation, and the willingness to take action were what set true leaders apart. Vengeance without wisdom is merely violence. True revenge requires patience, precision, and the willingness to sacrifice what others cannot bear to lose. The brass key that had started this journey hung on a chain around his neck, now a constant reminder of the legacy he was fighting to protect and the promises he had made to his father, to Jessica, and to himself. The shadows were closing in, but Victor Mercer remained one move ahead, guiding his opponents inexorably toward a confrontation of his design. The chess master's gambit was approaching its conclusion. The European Commission's headquarters in Brussels hummed with anticipation as delegates assembled for what had been discreetly billed as a special presentation on innovations in sustainable energy. Behind the bland title lay what insiders suspected was a major technological breakthrough, one with profound geopolitical implications. Victor stood at the podium, projecting calm authority as he addressed the assembled commissioners, scientific advisors, and select industry representatives. Jessica sat in the front row alongside Lawrence Sullivan, who had championed their cause within the commission. "What I present today," Victor began, "is not merely a new technology, but a paradigm shift in how we generate, store, and distribute energy. Mercurium represents the culmination of 3 decades of research initiated by my father and carried forward by our team of dedicated scientists." The presentation that followed was meticulously calibrated, revealing enough to demonstrate the revolutionary potential of mercurium, while withholding critical details that would allow replication without authorization. Victor outlined applications ranging from grid-scale energy storage to medical devices powered by microscopic mercurium cells that could last decades. "The patent framework we've established," he continued, "is designed to protect this innovation while ensuring its benefits are widely accessible. Phoenix Innovations proposes a manufacturing and licensing model that prioritizes humanitarian applications while maintaining commercial viability." Questions from the commissioners followed, probing the scientific claims, environmental impact, and economic implications. Victor and his team of experts addressed each methodically, building credibility with every response. As the session concluded, Commission President Elise Montfort approached Victor with evident enthusiasm. "This could transform the European energy landscape, Mr. Mercer. The Commission is prepared to fast-track approval processes and provide necessary security cooperation." "That's precisely what we hope to hear, Madam President," Victor replied, "particularly regarding security. There are certain interests that would prefer this technology remain exclusively under American control." Montfort's expression grew serious. "Yes, we've received some rather forceful diplomatic communications from Washington on that subject." Her words confirmed what Victor already knew. The battle for mercurium had captured the world's attention, and the next moves would determine not just his family's future, but the direction of global progress itself. "Rest assured, the Commission recognizes your rights as the legitimate developer of this technology." The internal politics of the situation weren't lost on Victor. European energy independence had long been a strategic priority, particularly given recurring tensions with Russian suppliers. Mercurium offered a path to that independence, while simultaneously strengthening Europe's position in green technology markets. As they left the Commission building under heavy security, Jessica received an urgent, encrypted message from their team in Switzerland. "Blackwell's operatives have moved against our secondary facility in Zurich. Local authorities intercepted them based on our intelligence sharing." Victor nodded, unsurprised. "They're growing desperate. The Commission's support limits their legal options." Jessica studied her father's expression. "You knew they would escalate to this point." "I counted on it," Victor confirmed. "Every aggressive move they make strengthens our position with European authorities, while weakening their standing internationally. Their conversation was interrupted by another alert, this one from their security team monitoring Abigail. Ms. Mercer is being followed by unidentified individuals. Surveillance protocols activated. Victor's expression hardened. Implement extraction plan Delta. Get her to the safe house in Amsterdam immediately. What about Mom? Jessica asked. If they're moving against Abigail. Your mother made her choice, Victor replied coldly. She aligned herself with Blackwell and Bryant, knowing exactly what kind of people they are. Jessica looked troubled, but didn't argue. The stakes had escalated beyond family dynamics to a potentially dangerous confrontation. Back at their secure Brussels headquarters, Victor received confirmation that Abigail had been safely extracted and was en route to Amsterdam. Simultaneously, reports arrived of increased diplomatic pressure from Washington, formal protests regarding the misappropriation of technology with national security implications. They're attempting to frame this as an intelligence issue, analyzed Helena, who had joined them in Brussels. They're suggesting that mercurium derived from classified American research, a transparent attempt to justify intervention. A transparent attempt, but one that will gain little traction given our extensive documentation of the research lineage, Victor observed. Later that evening, as Victor reviewed security protocols for their return to Switzerland, he received an unexpected call on his private line. Maxwell Bryant. This has gone far enough. Bryant began without preamble. You've made your point. Now it's time to be reasonable. Reasonable, Victor repeated with dangerous calm. Was it reasonable to betray my trust, to conspire with my wife behind my back, to align with those attempting to steal my father's legacy? You're missing the bigger picture. Blackwell has connections throughout Washington. Victor interrupted, his tone icy. And I have the future of energy in my hand. Perhaps you should consider, Max, whether it's too late for reason. He can make things very difficult for everyone involved, including your daughters. Victor's voice dropped to an icy register. Are you threatening my children, Max? I'm trying to prevent things from escalating further, Bryant insisted. Olivia is beside herself with worry about Abigail's disappearance. How touching that my wife suddenly remembers her maternal instincts. Tell her Abigail is safe, safer than she would be in Olivia's company at present. Victor, please, we can still resolve this amicably. Substantial financial compensation, recognition of your contributions. You still don't understand, do you? Victor interrupted. This was never about money. It's about justice. For my father, for myself, and for those who trusted me to protect what matters. After ending the call, Victor turned to Jessica. They're preparing their final gambit. We need to accelerate our timeline. The next morning brought news that Liam had publicly denounced Victor, claiming he had stolen proprietary research from Mercer Industries before his departure. The accusation was particularly rich coming from someone who had attempted to disinherit Victor entirely, but it served Blackwell's narrative of painting Victor as a rogue actor. Victor's legal team immediately filed countersuits, while simultaneously releasing selected documents demonstrating that the mercurium research had never been part of Mercer Industries' portfolio, but had always existed as a separate entity under Theodore's personal control. As legal and diplomatic maneuvering intensified, Victor proceeded with the next phase of his plan. The European Commission formally approved Phoenix Innovations' patent applications and granted regulatory approval for initial production facilities in Switzerland and Germany. Simultaneously, licensing agreements were signed with select manufacturers in Japan, South Korea, and India, creating a global network that would be virtually impossible to suppress. We're approaching the point of irreversibility, Victor explained to Jessica as they reviewed the agreements. Once mercurium technology is being implemented across multiple jurisdictions, no single government, not even the United States, can effectively contain it. Jessica nodded thoughtfully. And that's when Blackwell and his allies will be truly desperate. Precisely, Victor confirmed, which is why the next 48 hours are the most dangerous. That evening, as they prepared to return to their Alpine headquarters, Victor received word that Abigail had arrived safely at the Amsterdam safe house and was requesting to speak with him directly. Over a secure video link, Victor saw his eldest daughter's face, tension evident in her expression, but also a new resolve that reminded him painfully of Theodore. "Dad, I'm sorry," Abigail began, her voice steady despite obvious emotion. "I should have seen what was happening sooner. Mom tried to convince me you were having some kind of breakdown, but then I overheard her with Bryant, talking about containing you and securing the research at any cost." "It's not your fault," Victor assured her. "They'd been orchestrating this deception for years." Abigail shook her head. "I should have questioned why Mom suddenly encouraged me to distance myself from you after Grandpa got sick. She was positioning me, using me." Her expression hardened. "I want to help, Dad. Whatever you're doing, whatever Grandpa left you, I want to protect it too." Victor studied his daughter's face, weighing the risk of bringing her further into the conflict against the potential value of her support. "It's dangerous, Abigail. These people have resources and influence beyond what you can imagine." "I know, Mercer," she replied with quiet determination. "We don't back down from challenges, right?" For the first time in weeks, Victor felt a genuine smile cross his face. "No, we don't. But we do approach them strategically." He outlined a limited role for her that would keep her relatively safe, while leveraging her financial expertise to help secure their growing international network. After the call ended, Jessica looked at her father with studied neutrality. "You didn't tell her everything." "No," Victor acknowledged. "Some burdens remain ours alone." The burden Jessica referred to was the final phase of Victor's strategy, the countermove he had been preparing since discovering his father's journal. While securing Mercurium's future was paramount, Victor had not forgotten those who had betrayed him. The chess master's trap was set, lacking only the final piece to spring it. That piece arrived the following morning in the form of intelligence that Senator Blackwell, Maxwell Bryant, and Olivia would be meeting with Liam and Patricia at Blackwell's private estate that weekend. The meeting's purpose, according to their source, was to finalize a strategy for legal and extra-legal measures against Victor. "They're consolidating their alliance," Helene observed, "preparing for a coordinated assault." "Exactly as I predicted," Victor replied, a cold satisfaction in his voice. "They believe they're gathering strength, but they're actually concentrating their vulnerability." Jessica looked at her father with growing concern. "What are you planning?" Victor met her gaze steadily. "Justice, Jessica. Nothing more, nothing less." As they boarded their private jet to return to Switzerland, Victor felt the weight of the brass key against his chest. From that first moment at his father's funeral, every step had led to this precipice, the point of no return, where vengeance and legacy converge. The betrayers believed they were closing in, forcing Victor's hand. They didn't realize they were exactly where he had always intended them to be, gathered together, overconfident, and completely unprepared for what was about to happen. The chess master's endgame was about to begin. Senator Blackwell's estate outside Washington, D.C., sprawled across 50 acres of manicured grounds, its neoclassical mansion projecting the power and privilege of its owner. Security was extensive, but discreet. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, surveillance cameras monitored all approaches, and a sophisticated electronic defense system protected against intrusions. None of it would be sufficient. Inside the mansion's wood-paneled study, Blackwell hosted his conspirators. Liam and Patricia Mercer sat anxiously on a leather sofa, their initial confidence eroded by recent developments. Olivia paced by the windows, her usual composure fractured by concern over Abigail. Maxwell Bryant stood by the fireplace, his prosecutor's mind working overtime, attempting to anticipate Victor's next move. "The European Commission's decision complicates matters significantly," Blackwell acknowledged, swirling his bourbon. "Our legal challenges will face heightened scrutiny given the international dimensions." "Can't you leverage national security provisions?" Patricia asked. "Force a technology review." Bryant shook his head. Victor's team anticipated that approach. They've documented the entire research lineage, proving it was developed outside U.S. jurisdiction from the beginning. Theodore Mercer was nothing if not methodical. Like father, like son, Olivia muttered. Victor always was obsessively detail-oriented. A trait you might have appreciated before betraying him, came a voice from the study door. All heads turned in shock to see Victor Mercer standing in the doorway, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his expression one of cold composure. Behind him stood Jessica, and to everyone's surprise, Abigail. "How the hell did you get in here?" Blackwell demanded, reaching for the security call button on his desk. "I wouldn't," Victor advised calmly. "Your security team is currently dealing with what appears to be a coordinated intrusion at the east perimeter, a distraction of my design." Olivia stepped forward, addressing Abigail. "Honey, what are you doing with him?" "We've been worried sick." Abigail's expression hardened. "Save it, Mom. I heard you and Brian discussing how to contain Dad, whatever that meant. I'm exactly where I choose to be." Liam attempted to recover his composure. "If you're here to negotiate, Victor, this theatricality is unnecessary." "Negotiate," Victor repeated with a hint of amusement. "No, Liam. I'm here to inform you of what has already happened." He gestured to Jessica, who opened a laptop on Blackwell's desk. At 3:17 p.m. Eastern Time, Victor explained as financial data appeared on the screen. Phoenix Innovations completed its acquisition of controlling interest in Olympus Group through a series of shell companies established over the past month. Blackwell's face drained of color. "That's impossible." The ownership structure was deliberately vulnerable to precisely this kind of operation. Victor finished for him. The trap had sprung, and there would be no escape this time. Your focus on political connections left your corporate governance remarkably exposed. My father taught me to secure the foundation before building a house. Bryant stepped forward. Whatever financial maneuvers you've managed, they won't stand up to regulatory scrutiny. Everything was executed in full compliance with applicable laws, Victor countered. Unlike your conspiracy to appropriate technology through coercion and threat, which has been thoroughly documented. He nodded to Jessica, who displayed emails, recorded conversations, and bank transfers implicating everyone in the room. "This is blackmail," Patricia accused. "This is consequence," Victor corrected. "Each of you made choices believing there would be no reckoning. You were wrong." He turned to Liam and Patricia. "Your shares in Mercer Industries are now worthless. The company will be dissolved, its assets absorbed by Phoenix Innovations. The board positions promised by Senator Blackwell no longer exist." Liam lunged forward, his face contorted with rage, but was restrained by Bryant. "You can't do this. Father wouldn't have wanted." "Father knew exactly what you were," Victor interrupted coldly. "His journal documented your betrayals going back years, the projects you sabotaged, the contracts you undermined, all in service to your own ambitions." Patricia's composure cracked. "You're lying. Father loved us. He loved the children you once were," Victor agreed. "He mourned the adults you became." Turning to Blackwell, Victor continued, "Senator, your political career ended approximately 20 minutes ago when selected documents regarding your dealings with certain foreign interests were delivered to the Justice Department and major news outlets. I expect the Senate Ethics Committee will have questions." Blackwell's expression shifted from shock to calculation. "You've overplayed your hand, Mercer. I still have friends in Washington who are currently distancing themselves from you as quickly as possible," Victor finished. "Self-preservation is the politician's first instinct, after all." Next, Victor addressed Bryant. "As for you, Max, the Bar Association frowns upon prosecutors who engage in conspiracies to appropriate private property. Your disciplinary hearing is scheduled for next month. I don't expect you'll retain your license." Bryant's face flushed with anger. "You vindictive bastard. This was never about the technology for you. This was personal revenge." "It was both," Victor acknowledged. "The technology deserved protection, and you deserve consequences." Finally, Victor turned to Olivia. Throughout his methodical dismantling of the others, she had watched with growing horror, recognizing the calculated precision of her husband's revenge. "Olivia," Victor said, his voice betraying emotion for the first time. 15 years of marriage. And you chose to throw it away for this." He gestured dismissively at Bryant. "Not for love. We both know that's not what drove you. For advantage. For position. You were never there." "Victor," she countered, a hint of desperation in her voice. "Always working. Always focused on the company, on your father's approval. A convenient narrative." "A convenient narrative," Victor acknowledged. "Perhaps even partially true. But it doesn't excuse betrayal." Jessica stepped forward, displaying additional documents. "The divorce proceedings have been amended. Given the evidence of conspiracy and attempted appropriation of family assets, Mother will receive only what the prenuptial agreement stipulates in cases of infidelity, which is essentially nothing." Olivia's face paled. "You can't be serious. After everything, the years I gave to this family, years spent planning your exit strategy." Victor interrupted. "The offshore accounts, the manipulated investment portfolios, all documented in Father's files. He saw it. I was too blind to recognize." Abigail stepped forward, her expression pained but resolute. "I found your packed suitcases, Mom, hidden in the guest house. You were planning to leave once this was all over, weren't you? Once you had secured your share of whatever you thought Grandpa left us." Olivia's silence was confirmation enough. Victor checked his watch. "Our business here is concluded. Each of you will find detailed information regarding your new circumstances in communications being delivered shortly. I suggest you consult with independent legal counsel. Oh, I recommend against collusion. Your phones and emails are being monitored by relevant authorities." As they moved to leave, Liam made one final desperate attempt. "Victor, we're still family. Whatever our differences, blood counts for something." Victor paused at the doorway, looking back at his brother. "You denied me as family at Father's funeral. You called me a disappointment to his face, while his body was barely cold. Consider this my response." Outside, as they walked to their waiting vehicle, Jessica glanced at her father. Was it worth it? Seeing their faces, Victor considered the question seriously. "It wasn't about satisfaction, Jessica. It was about justice and protection. They would never have stopped trying to take what Father left us. Now they can't." Abigail, still processing the confrontation, looked troubled. "What happens to them now?" "They face the consequences of their choices," Victor replied simply. "Something they never expected to do." As their car pulled away from Blackwell's estate, Victor received confirmation that the final phase of his operation was complete. All electronic evidence had been secured, legal filings executed, and financial transfers confirmed. The chess game was over. Checkmate, just as he had promised. The brass key that had started it all still hung around his neck, a way to remind him of the journey from betrayal to justice. Theodore Mercer had trusted his son to protect his true legacy. Victor had done that and more. He had ensured that legacy would endure, uncorrupted by those who sought to exploit it. As they flew back to Switzerland that night, Victor gazed out at the darkness below, feeling neither triumph nor remorse, only the quiet certainty that he had done what was necessary. The father's wisdom and the son's resolve had combined to forge a new future from the ashes of betrayal. The key had indeed unlocked the truth. What remained was to build something worthy of that truth, a legacy that would honor Theodore's vision, while charting a course distinctly Victor's own. 3 months after the confrontation at Blackwell's estate, the consequences of Victor's calculated vengeance continued to unfold like aftershocks from an earthquake. Senator Howard Blackwell had resigned from the Senate amid investigations into influence peddling and national security breaches. His political allies abandoned him with stunning speed, each rushing to distance themselves from the growing scandal. His fortune, much of it tied to Olympus Group, had evaporated with the company's dissolution. Maxwell Bryant had been disbarred following ethics violations that extended well beyond his conspiracy with Blackwell. The investigation had uncovered years of prosecutorial misconduct, with numerous cases now under review. His reputation destroyed, Bryant had retreated from public life entirely. Liam and Patricia Mercer, their financial security shattered by the collapse of both Mercer Industries and their Olympus Group arrangements, had been reduced to selling personal assets to maintain their lifestyles. More damaging than their financial losses, however, was the revelation of their betrayals published in select business journals, ensuring that no reputable organization would risk associating with them. Olivia had perhaps suffered the most complete downfall. The divorce had left her with only what she had brought into the marriage, modest compared to her aspirations. Her social standing, built on her position as Victor Mercer's wife, had evaporated overnight. Former friends, sensing the shift in power, had closed their doors to her. The careful image she had cultivated for 15 years had been replaced by a new narrative: the calculating wife who had betrayed her husband for advantage. Victor observed these developments with detached interest rather than satisfaction. Vengeance, he had discovered, did not bring the emotional resolution one might expect. Instead, it created a clean slate, a foundation upon which something new could be built. At the newly expanded Alpine facility, now the global headquarters of Phoenix Innovations, Victor stood with Jessica and Abigail on the observation deck, overlooking the manufacturing floor where the first commercial applications of mercurium technology were being produced. The medical implants begin clinical trials next month, Jessica reported, reviewing data on her tablet. The energy storage systems are already exceeding projected efficiency metrics. Victor nodded, a sense of pride in his daughter's accomplishments and the future that now awaited them. Abigail, who had taken responsibility for the company's financial and philanthropic initiatives, added, "The foundation framework is complete. Initial grants will focus on implementing mercurium technology for communities with limited energy infrastructure." Victor nodded approvingly. Over the past months, Abigail had proven herself not only capable, but genuinely committed to the humanitarian aspects of Theodore's vision. The betrayal she had witnessed had transformed her, stripping away the materialistic values Olivia had instilled and revealing a core of integrity that reminded Victor powerfully of his father. "What about the governance structure?" Victor asked, referring to the complex international framework they had established to prevent any single entity, including themselves, from controlling mercurium technology exclusively. "The Oversight Council meets next week in Geneva," Jessica confirmed, representatives from 12 countries, plus the scientific and humanitarian committees. The distributed patent model has been finalized. Victor's vision for mercurium had evolved beyond simple commercialization. Recognizing its potential to reshape global power structures, he had designed a governance system that balanced legitimate security concerns, commercial viability, and humanitarian applications. It was a delicate balance, but one that honored Theodore's intention that the technology benefit humanity broadly rather than serve narrow interests. Later that evening, as Victor worked in his father's old office, now his own, he received an unexpected call from Helena. "We've received a request for a meeting," she informed him, her tone suggesting the request was unusual. "From Olivia." Victor's expression remained impassive, though something flickered in his eyes. "What does she want?" She didn't specify, only that it concerns Jessica and Abigail. After a moment's consideration, Victor replied, "Arrange it. Neutral location, full security protocols." The meeting was set for the following day at a private room in a Geneva hotel, under the watchful eye of Phoenix security personnel. Victor arrived precisely on time to find Olivia already seated, her appearance markedly different from when he had last seen her. The designer clothes and perfect styling had been replaced by simpler attire, and her face showed the strain of recent months. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," she began as Victor took a seat across from her. "You mentioned it concerned our daughters," Victor replied neutrally. "That earned you a hearing." Olivia nodded, tension evident in her posture. "I want to apologize to them. To all of you, not through lawyers or intermediaries, but directly. I've had months to reflect on my actions and She faltered briefly. I need them to know I regret what I did." Victor studied her carefully, searching for the calculation or manipulation that had characterized their later years together. He found instead something he hadn't expected: genuine remorse. For the first time, the barriers between them seemed to soften, if only a little, leaving room for honesty and the possibility of forgiveness. "Why now?" he asked. "Because I finally understand what I've lost," Olivia admitted. "Not the money or status, though I won't pretend those don't matter to me, but them, my daughters." Her composure cracked slightly. "I keep seeing Abigail's face when she found those suitcases, the way she looked at me." "Actions have consequences, Olivia," Victor said quietly. "That was always the lesson you refused to learn." "I'm learning it now," she replied with a bitter smile. "Every day, in 1,000 ways." Victor considered her request seriously. His instinct for vengeance had been satisfied. What remained was consideration for his daughter's well-being. "I won't make that decision for them. I'll convey your request. But whether they meet with you is entirely their choice." Olivia nodded, accepting. "That's fair. More than fair, given everything." As Victor prepared to leave, Olivia asked a final question. "Was any of it real for you, Victor? Our marriage?" He paused, considering the complex history between them. The beginning was real. The middle had moments. The end was inevitable. Once you decided loyalty was negotiable. Back at the Alpine facility, Victor relayed Olivia's request to Jessica and Abigail without recommendation, allowing them to process the information and make their own decisions. "Do you think she's sincere?" Jessica asked, her scientific mind always seeking evidence and patterns. "I believe she regrets the consequences of her actions," Victor replied carefully. "Whether that constitutes sincere remorse for the actions themselves is more difficult to assess." Abigail, who had been more deeply wounded by Olivia's betrayal, remained silent for a long moment. "I'm not ready," she finally said. "Maybe someday, but not yet." Jessica nodded in agreement. "I need more time as well." Victor respected their decision, informing Olivia through intermediaries while ensuring his daughter's privacy was maintained. It was another step in the ongoing process of rebuilding. Not the family that had been broken, but something new, formed from its strongest elements. In the weeks that followed, Phoenix Innovations continued its rapid expansion. The first commercial energy storage systems using mercurium technology were installed in developing regions, providing stable power to communities that had never had reliable electricity. Medical applications progressed through clinical trials with promising results. The governance framework successfully navigated its initial challenges, balancing commercial security and humanitarian interests. Throughout this period, Victor maintained his focus on building rather than dwelling on the past. The betrayals that had initiated his journey were now footnotes, rather than driving forces. Theodore's true legacy was emerging, not just the revolutionary technology, but the vision of responsible innovation it represented. One evening, as Victor worked late in his office, he received a surprise visit from Jessica. She placed a small wooden box on his desk, identical to the one that had contained Theodore's journal. "I found this in Grandpa's secondary vault," she explained. "It has your name on it." Inside was another journal, newer than the first, with a brief note paper clipped to the cover. "Victor, if you're reading this, then you've navigated the trial successfully. The first journal showed you what would have been done against you. This one contains my hopes for what might be built in response. Not vengeance, but vision. I trust you to find the balance between the two." As Victor began reading, he discovered Theodore's detailed reflections on the potential applications of mercurium beyond what had already been implemented: environmental restoration, advanced medical treatments, even space exploration. The journal represented not just technological possibilities, but philosophical questions about responsible innovation and human progress. "He saw so far ahead," Victor murmured, deeply moved by his father's foresight and trust. Jessica smiled. Like father, like son. In that moment, Victor felt the weight of the brass key around his neck. no longer a burden of vengeance, but a symbol of responsibility and possibility. The key that had unlocked the truth now unlocked the future. The ashes of betrayal had been transformed into the iron of purpose. What remained was to forge that purpose into a legacy worthy of the trust placed in him, not just by his father, but by his daughters and the world that would be shaped by the power they now controlled. 1 year after Theodore Mercer's funeral, the transformation was complete. Phoenix Innovations had emerged as one of the most significant technological forces in the world, its mercurium applications reshaping industries from energy to medicine to transportation. The governance framework Victor had established ensured this revolution benefited humanity broadly, rather than consolidating power in the hands of the few. On the anniversary of his father's death, Victor stood alone at Theodore's grave in the small private cemetery on the Alpine property. The majestic mountains rose around him, their eternal presence a reminder of the perspective his father had always tried to instill. "You were right," Victor said quietly to the granite headstone. "About everything. The betrayals, the legacy, the responsibility." He touched the brass key that still hung around his neck. "I protected what mattered, just as you asked." The past year had seen the complete dissolution of his former life. Mercer Industries no longer existed, its valuable assets absorbed into Phoenix, while its corrupted elements were allowed to collapse. The conspirators who had gathered against him had been thoroughly neutralized, rendered harmless through the systematic dismantling of their power and influence. Senator Blackwell now faced federal charges, his political empire crumbling to dust. Here, surrounded by the strength and memory of the mountains, Victor finally allowed himself a moment of peace, knowing his journey from ashes had forged not only a new legacy, but also a lasting example of justice, responsibility, and vision. Maxwell Bryant, disbarred and financially ruined, had retreated to obscurity. Liam and Patricia, their resources exhausted and reputations destroyed, had been reduced to selling family heirlooms to maintain semblances of their former lifestyles. Olivia, perhaps, had shown the most capacity for evolution. After being rejected by her daughters, she had withdrawn from public life entirely. Recent reports suggested she had begun working with a small humanitarian organization. Whether from genuine change of heart or simply necessity was unclear. Victor had watched these developments with detachment rather than satisfaction. The vengeance that had initially driven him had been fulfilled so completely that it left no room for lingering hatred. What remained was a clear-eyed focus on building something worthy of the price paid. "Your granddaughters are thriving," he continued his one-sided conversation with Theodore. "Jessica's research division is breaking new ground in medical applications. Abigail has transformed our philanthropic initiatives into something truly revolutionary." Indeed, both daughters had found their places within the new structure Victor had created. Jessica, with her scientific brilliance, led the research and development division of Phoenix Innovations, pushing the boundaries of what mercurium technology could achieve. Abigail, having discovered a passion for using business as a force for positive change, had established the Phoenix Foundation, which implemented technology solutions in underserved communities worldwide. The family that remained had been forged stronger by the crucible they had endured together. Victor, Jessica, and Abigail formed a trinity of purpose, each contributing their unique strengths to the vision Theodore had entrusted to them. As Victor placed a small stone on Theodore's headstone, an old family tradition, Helena approached from the path leading back to the facility. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said respectfully, "but the Board of Governors is assembled for the annual review. They're waiting for your address." Victor nodded. "I'll be there shortly." The Board of Governors represented the innovative governance structure Victor had established, a balanced coalition of scientific experts, humanitarian leaders, ethical advisors, and industry representatives from around the world. Together, they ensured mercurium technology developed according to principles of responsible innovation, rather than mere profit or power. In the facility's grand conference room, Victor addressed the assembled governors, his presence commanding without domination. "A year ago," he began, We faced a critical decision about the future of this technology. It could have become a tool of control, monopolized by those who valued power above progress. Instead, you have helped guide it toward becoming what my father always envisioned, a catalyst for genuine advancement. He looked around the room, seeing in their faces the trust and hope for a better future, and knew that the legacy of Theodore Mercer had truly ascended beyond the ashes. The presentation that followed outlined Phoenix's accomplishments: energy systems bringing reliable power to remote communities, medical applications saving lives in previously untreatable conditions, and environmental technologies beginning to address climate challenges. Each innovation balanced commercial viability with ethical application and equitable access. After the meeting concluded, Victor met privately with Jessica and Abigail in Theodore's old study, now a shared family space where the three of them often gathered to discuss matters too important for formal boardrooms. "The Alpine expansion is ready," Jessica reported, displaying plans for a new research facility dedicated to environmental applications. "With the advanced atmosphere processors, we could begin reversing carbon accumulation within 5 years. Abigail added, "The implementation program for developing regions is exceeding projections. 37 communities now have self-sustaining energy and water systems based on mercurium technology." Victor listened with quiet pride, recognizing in his daughters the best qualities of the Mercer legacy: innovation tempered by responsibility, ambition guided by principle. They had witnessed the worst consequences of betrayal and had chosen a different path. "There's something else we wanted to discuss," Jessica continued, exchanging glances with her sister. "We've been considering the family structure of Phoenix." Victor raised an eyebrow, inviting her to continue. "As it stands, ultimate control rests with you," Abigail explained. "That was necessary during the establishment phase. But looking forward, you're concerned about power concentration," Victor observed, "just as I was when creating the governance framework." Both daughters nodded. "We've developed a transition plan," Jessica explained, presenting a document, a trust structure that would eventually distribute control among the three of us equally, with built-in protections against any future situations like what happened with Uncle Liam and Aunt Patricia. Victor studied the proposal with careful attention. It represented precisely the kind of thoughtful governance he had tried to instill, acknowledging the temptations of power and creating systems to mitigate them. "This is excellent work," he said finally. "Theodore would approve." That evening, as Victor worked in his office reviewing technical reports, he received an unexpected alert from the security system. Someone had accessed the main facility using an old authentication code, one that should have been deactivated months ago. The security footage showed Dorothy Winters, Theodore's former assistant, entering the building. Rather than dispatching security, Victor went personally to meet her, curious about what would bring her here after so much time. He found her in the memorial room that had been dedicated to Theodore, studying the displays that chronicled his innovations and vision. "Dorothy," Victor greeted her, "this is an unexpected visit." She turned, smiling sadly. "I apologize for the intrusion. I used the emergency override your father gave me. I should have called ahead." "It's fine," Victor assured her. "What brings you here?" Dorothy reached into her bag and produced a small package wrapped in aging paper. "I was going through some personal effects, preparing to move to a smaller place, and found this. Your father gave it to me years ago, with instructions to deliver it to you when the storm has passed and rebuilding has begun." Victor accepted the package, recognizing Theodore's handwriting on the outer wrapper. He always was several steps ahead. That was his gift, Dorothy agreed, seeing further than others could. After she departed, Victor returned to his office and carefully unwrapped the package. Inside was a small wooden box, similar to those that had contained the journals, but older, its wood darkened with age. Within it lay a ring bearing the same family crest that was engraved on the brass key. A note in Theodore's handwriting explained, "This ring belonged to your grandfather and his father before him. It represents not authority, but responsibility, the obligation to use power wisely and in service to more than self. The key unlocks the truth. The ring bears the weight of what you do with that truth. Victor studied the ring thoughtfully, understanding its significance. Throughout his campaign of vengeance and subsequent rebuilding, he had been guided by Theodore's wisdom and foresight. This final gift seemed to acknowledge that the transition was complete, from son seeking justice to leader charting a new course. The following day, Victor made an unexpected announcement to the Phoenix leadership team. He would be stepping back from day-to-day operations, elevating Jessica and Abigail to co-leadership positions while he focused on strategic vision and the ethical framework of their expanding influence. "The future belongs to the next generation," he explained. "My role now is to ensure they have the foundation and freedom to build something greater than I could imagine." In the private ceremony that followed, attended only by Jessica, Abigail, and a few core team members who had been with them since the beginning, Victor formally established the new leadership structure. As he placed the family ring on a shared pendant that would remain in the Mercer family vault, accessible to all three of them, but owned by none individually, he completed the transformation his father had begun. Theodore Mercer understood that true legacy isn't about control, but about contribution, Victor told them. Not what we own, but what we create. Not who we defeat, but who we lift up. That night, as Victor stood on the observation deck, overlooking the illuminated facility embedded in the mountainside, Helena joined him for a rare moment of reflection. "Did you achieve what you set out to do?" she asked. "When all this began at your father's funeral?" Victor considered the question carefully, searching the horizon for an answer that felt honest. "What I set out to do was ensure justice for my father, for myself, for the truth. That was accomplished." He looked out at the mountains, their ancient presence a reminder of perspective. What emerged afterward was something more significant than mere vengeance. "Phoenix from the ashes," Helena observed. Victor nodded, touching the key that still hung around his neck, now paired with a small replica of the family ring. "The destruction was necessary, but not sufficient. What matters is what we built from the ruins." The betrayal at his father's funeral had indeed changed the Mercer family forever, but not in the way his enemies had intended. Where they had sought to diminish and control, they had instead catalyzed transformation and growth. The father's wisdom, the son's resolve, and the daughter's vision had combined to create something none of them could have achieved alone. As for those who betrayed him, Liam, Patricia, Olivia, Bryant, Blackwell, Victor had fulfilled his promise. He had neither forgiven nor forgotten. Justice had been served with cold precision. Yet vengeance had been only the beginning of the story, not its conclusion. The key that had unlocked the truth had ultimately unlocked something far more valuable, a future worthy of the past that had shaped it. In that, Victor Mercer had found not just satisfaction, but meaning. Not just victory, but legacy. Not just vengeance, but justice. The Phoenix had risen stronger than before, its ascent only just beginning.